The massive space station called Harmony floated in the darkness between star systems like a small metal planet. Inside its gleaming halls, hundreds of different alien species gathered for their monthly council meeting. The air hummed with dozens of different languages as creatures with scales, tentacles, and crystalline bodies moved through the corridors. Ambassador Krell adjusted his purple robes and checked his datapad one final time. The tall, thin alien had been looking forward to this presentation for weeks. His species, the Vorthans, had spent months studying a newly discovered planet, and the results were absolutely hilarious. He walked into the great assembly hall where representatives from across the galaxy sat in specially designed seats that accommodated their various body types. The massive chamber fell silent as Krell stepped up to the speaking platform. Above him, a holographic display showed images of a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The planet looked peaceful enough, covered in swirling white clouds and vast oceans. "Honored representatives," Krell began, his voice carrying easily through the hall's advanced sound system, "today I present our findings on the third planet of the Sol system. The inhabitants call themselves humans, and I must say they provide quite entertaining study material." A few chuckles rippled through the audience. The insectoid Queen Zara clicked her mandibles in what passed for laughter among her kind. Even the usually serious crystal beings from the Nexus system began to emit soft, harmonic tones of amusement. Krell activated his holographic projector, and images of human technology filled the space above the assembly. Primitive rockets belched smoke and fire as they struggled to escape their planet's gravity. Crude satellites orbited the world in chaotic patterns. On the surface, humans fought wars with weapons that seemed barely more advanced than throwing rocks. As you can see, Krell continued, barely able to contain his own amusement, these creatures are still burning chemicals to achieve spaceflight. They have managed to place exactly 12 of their kind on their own moon, and they consider this a great achievement. Their fastest spacecraft would take over 70,000 years to reach even the nearest star system. The laughter grew louder. Trade Minister Voss, whose tentacles writhed with mirth, called out from his seat. "Do they at least have fusion? Power? Oh, this is the best part," Krell replied, his eyes gleaming with delight. "They have discovered nuclear energy, but they use it primarily to threaten each other. They have built enough weapons to destroy their entire planet several times over, yet they cannot figure out how to use the same technology to power their cities efficiently." The hall erupted in what could only be described as interspecies laughter. The bird-like Aryans squawked in their seats. The massive, slow-moving Titans rumbled with deep, earth-shaking chuckles. Even the artificial intelligences from the Machine Collective flashed their lights in patterns that indicated humor. "But surely," called out Dr. Yix, the council's chief, "scientist, they show some promise in other areas?" Krell's smile widened. "They are currently engaged in what they call a climate crisis. Their industrial activities are changing their planet's atmosphere so rapidly that it threatens their own survival. Yet, instead of working together to solve this problem, they argue about whether it is actually happening. Some of their governments actively work against solutions because they might reduce short-term profits." The laughter died down slightly as the representatives processed this information. Several species had gone through similar phases in their development, but usually not while possessing weapons of mass destruction. "They fight wars over resources," Krell continued, "while their planet contains enough raw materials to sustain them for millennia if properly managed. They have divided themselves into nearly 200 separate governments, each with its own military, even though they are all the same species on the same small world." Captain Nix of the Galactic Patrol raised one of his forearms. "Are they at least intellectually capable? Some primitive species show remarkable potential once they receive proper guidance." "That is perhaps the most amusing part," Krell replied. "They are undeniably intelligent. They have produced remarkable art, literature, and scientific discoveries. But they consistently use their intelligence for competition rather than cooperation. They have individuals who can solve complex mathematical problems that would challenge our best computers. Yet their societies cannot figure out how to distribute food efficiently. Millions of them starve while others waste enormous amounts of resources. The chamber buzzed with conversation as representatives discussed these findings with their neighbors. The general consensus seemed to be that humans were simultaneously fascinating and hopeless. "What is our recommendation?" asked Elder Thane, the ancient leader of the council whose species had been traveling between stars for over 1,000,000 years. Krell straightened his robes and assumed a more formal tone. "The survey team recommends classification as pre-contact. Primitive. They pose no threat to galactic civilization and offer nothing of value in trade or technology. We suggest monitoring their development over the next several thousand years to see if they manage to survive their own destructive tendencies." "Seconded," called out several voices from across the chamber. Trade Minister Voss waved his tentacles for attention. "Perhaps we should offer them membership in the council once they have learned to stop destroying their own nest. Give them another few millennia to mature." More laughter filled the hall. The idea of these primitive humans sitting among the great civilizations of the galaxy seemed absurd to everyone present. Elder Thane called for a formal vote. "All in favor of classifying the human species as pre-contact primitive?" Nearly every representative raised their hand, tentacle, or appropriate appendage. The few abstentions came from species that made it a policy never to vote on matters involving pre-contact civilizations. "The motion passes," Elder Thane announced. "The humans will be monitored from a distance and reconsidered for contact in 1,000 years, assuming they survive that long." As the representatives filed out of the chamber, discussing trade agreements and border disputes, none of them paid attention to the final line of Krell's report. The text scrolled past on their datapads, unread and unnoticed. "Species shows unusual adaptability and rapid technological advancement under pressure. Recommend continued observation." The great assembly hall emptied, leaving only cleaning robots to sweep up the debris of another day's galactic politics. Outside the station, the stars continued their ancient dance, indifferent to the decisions of the creatures who traveled between them. In the Sol system, on the third planet from a yellow star, 7 billion humans continued their daily lives, unaware that they had been judged and dismissed by civilizations they had never imagined. They went to work, raised their children, and looked up at the night sky, wondering if they were alone in the universe. The answer, had they known it, was that they were very much not alone. But according to the great powers of the galaxy, they were also very much not important. 3 months after the council meeting, Captain Nix received a communication that made his blood run cold. The message came through the emergency channels, marked with the highest priority codes used only for disasters or acts of war. "Vorthan Exploration Fleet Delta 7 has failed to report," the transmission stated in flat, official language. "Last known position, grid reference 847 Alpha, approximately 2 light-years from Sol system. Fleet consisted of 12 vessels, carrying 9,847 personnel. No distress signal received." Nick stared at the message display in his command center aboard the patrol ship Vigilant. A missing survey team was one thing, but an entire exploration fleet simply vanishing was unprecedented. The Vorthan ships were among the most advanced in the galaxy, equipped with shields that could withstand the radiation of dying stars and weapons capable of cracking small moons. He immediately dispatched 3 patrol vessels to investigate. The search teams found nothing. No debris fields, no energy signatures, no trace of what had happened to 12 massive starships. The patrol captains reported that space in the area appeared completely normal, as if the Vorthan fleet had simply ceased. "Captain," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving another priority message from Galactic Command." The second message was even more disturbing. A scientific expedition studying a pulsar near the edge of human space had also vanished. The research vessel Inquiry had been conducting routine measurements when it suddenly stopped responding to all communications. A rescue ship dispatched to investigate found only empty space where the vessel should have been within 2 weeks. The pattern became impossible to ignore. A merchant convoy carrying rare crystals from the outer rim disappeared while passing through the same general region. A diplomatic transport carrying peace negotiators to a border dispute vanished without sending even a partial distress signal. Every missing ship had been operating somewhere in the vicinity of the Sol system, though none had ventured close enough to be detected by the primitive humans. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Captain Nix stood before the same assembly that had laughed at the humans just months before, but now the mood was grim and worried. "The losses are unprecedented," he reported to the gathered representatives. "We have lost 43 vessels and over 15,000 personnel. In the past month alone, all disappearances have occurred within a 50-light-year radius of the Sol system." Ambassador Krell, who had seemed so confident during his presentation about human primitiveness, now looked shaken. "Are you suggesting the humans are responsible?" "That is impossible. Our surveillance shows they have barely managed to establish a small space station. They have no faster-than-light capability, no energy weapons, no defensive systems that could threaten even our oldest ships." "The evidence suggests otherwise," Captain Nix replied grimly. "Whatever is happening in that region of space, it is systematic and deliberate. Ships are not simply suffering accidents or equipment failures, they are being made to disappear." Dr. Yix, the Council's chief scientist, pulled up holographic displays showing the missing vessels' last known positions. "The pattern is clear," she said, her voice tight with concern. "Something is operating from the general direction of human space, intercepting our vessels before they can send distress signals. The technology required to accomplish this is beyond our current understanding." Trade Minister Voss writhed his tentacles nervously. "Perhaps we should avoid that region entirely until we understand what is happening." "That would be the prudent course," Elder Thane agreed. "But we cannot simply abandon our shipping lanes and research stations. The economic impact alone would be catastrophic." The debate continued for hours, but no one could provide a satisfactory explanation for the disappearances. The humans were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of leaving their own planet. Yet something operating from their region of space was making the galaxy's most advanced starships vanish without a trace. The mystery deepened when the exploration vessel Starbound, equipped with the most sophisticated sensors in the galactic fleet, was dispatched to investigate. The massive ship carried a crew of 2,000 and enough firepower to sterilize a small planet. Its captain, a veteran of 3 interstellar wars, was confident that his vessel could handle whatever threat they might encounter. The Starbound's final transmission came exactly 18 hours after it entered the danger zone. Captain Nix listened to the recorded message with growing horror as he played it back for the Council. "This is Captain Roth of the Starbound," the voice crackled through the speakers. "We are detecting multiple contacts approaching at impossible velocities. Energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The vessels appear to be using some form of stealth technology that makes them nearly invisible to our sensors." There was a pause, filled with the sound of alarms and shouted orders in the background. "They are not responding to our communication. Attempts," the captain continued, his voice growing more strained. "Weapons are powered and ready, but I am not reading any hostile intent. They appear to be scanning us. The energy patterns are sophisticated beyond our understanding." Another pause, longer this time. "Wait, they are moving into attack formation. All vessels, prepare for combat. They are not showing up on any of our targeting systems. How can they be jamming our sensors while remaining invisible? This does not make sense." The transmission cut to static, then silence. Search and rescue teams found no trace of the Starbound or its crew. The massive vessel had simply vanished, leaving behind only questions and growing fear among the galactic community. Ambassador Krell requested an emergency meeting with the Council's military advisors. The Vorthan diplomat, who had once dismissed humans as harmless primitives, now looked haunted by the implications of what was happening. "We need to reconsider our assessment of the human species," he said quietly. "Our surveillance data may be incomplete or deliberately misleading. No primitive civilization could be responsible for these disappearances. But that is impossible, protested Dr. Yix. Our sensors are accurate. The humans are still using chemical rockets and fighting wars with projectile weapons. They have no space-based military capability. Then explain the missing ships, Krell replied. Explain how vessels equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy are simply vanishing without a trace. The question hung in the air like a challenge. None of the assembled beings could provide an answer that made sense. The humans were primitive, their technology laughably backward compared to galactic standards. Yet something was operating from their region of space with capabilities that surpassed anything the Council had ever encountered. Captain Nix reviewed the data one more time, looking for any clue that might explain the impossible situation. The missing ships had been taken with precision and planning. Whatever was responsible had studied Council technology enough to defeat their most advanced defensive systems. The attack showed a level of strategic thinking that suggested not just advanced technology, but superior intelligence. As he stared at the star charts showing the locations of the disappeared vessels, a terrible thought began to form in his mind. What if the humans were not as primitive as they appeared? What if their apparent technological backwardness was somehow deliberate, designed to make the galaxy underestimate them? The thought was so absurd that he almost dismissed it immediately. But as he looked at the evidence, he could not shake the feeling that the galaxy had made a terrible mistake in their assessment of humanity. In the depths of space, near the edge of human territory, something moved in the darkness between stars. Advanced sensors swept the void, watching and waiting. The galaxy's great powers had revealed themselves, and now it was time to learn everything they had to teach. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A damaged reconnaissance probe, previously thought destroyed in the wave of disappearances, was discovered drifting in the outer reaches of the danger zone. The small automated vessel had been missing for 6 weeks, and its recovery offered the first real hope of understanding what was happening to the galaxy's missing ships. Dr. Yix worked around the clock to extract data from the probe's corrupted memory banks. The small device had taken massive damage, its hull scarred by energy weapons and its internal systems barely functional. But deep in its protected core, the probe's recording equipment had survived intact. I have recovered approximately 47 minutes of visual and audio data, Dr. Yix reported to the Emergency Council session. The quality is poor, but the content is extraordinary. The great assembly hall fell silent as the first images appeared on the holographic display. The footage showed empty space, the probe's cameras recording routine stellar observations. Nothing seemed unusual until timestamp 1423, when the probe's sensors detected incoming contacts. Here, Dr. Yix said, highlighting movement in the starfield. Watch carefully. The assembled representatives leaned forward in their seats as sleek dark shapes emerged from what appeared to be completely empty space. The vessels were unlike anything in the Council's databases, their hulls so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible precision, accelerating to near-light speeds without any visible propulsion systems. The energy signatures are completely unknown, Dr. Yix continued. These ships are using physics that our science cannot explain. They produce no exhaust, no radiation, no heat signature that our sensors can detect. They appear to manipulate space itself for propulsion. The footage showed the unknown vessels approaching a Vorthan exploration ship. The Council ship's shields flared to life, its weapon systems charging for combat. But the defensive measures that could withstand the energy output of a star proved useless against whatever weapons the dark ships carried, beams of focused energy, visible only as brief flashes of light, sliced through the Vorthan shields as if they were not there. The massive exploration vessel, nearly 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to destroy a small moon, was disabled in seconds. Impossible, whispered Ambassador Krell. Those shields could protect against a supernova. Nothing should be able to penetrate them so easily. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As the damaged probe drifted closer to the scene, its audio pickups detected transmissions from the attacking vessels. The communications were encrypted, but the probe's analysis systems had managed to decode fragments of the signals. "Listen carefully," Dr. Yik said as she played the recovered audio. The voices that emerged from the speakers were unmistakably human. The words were in English, one of the major languages of the supposedly primitive species that the Council had. "Dismissed as irrelevant. Target disabled," a calm voice reported. "Beginning salvage operations." "Confirmed," another voice replied. "Bring the survivors aboard for processing. We need to understand their technology better." The Council members sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. The attacking vessels were not just using unknown technology, they were crewed by humans. The species that could barely escape their own planet's gravity well was somehow operating starships that made the galaxy's most advanced vessels look like toys. "This cannot be correct," Elder Thane said finally. "Our surveillance of the human homeworld shows no indication of such advanced technology." "They are still using chemical rockets and primitive electronics," Dr. Yix nodded grimly. "That is exactly what makes this so disturbing. The technological gap between what we observe on Earth and what we see in this footage is impossible. No species advances this rapidly. It violates every model of technological development we have." The footage continued, showing the human vessels using sophisticated tractor beams to collect debris from the disabled Vorthan ship. The precision of their operations was remarkable, suggesting not just advanced technology but extensive experience in space combat and salvage operations. "They are studying us," Captain Nix observed. "Every piece of wreckage, every component they can recover, they are taking it aboard for analysis. This is not random violence. This is systematic intelligence gathering." The probe's final recordings showed something that chilled the assembled representatives to their core. As the human vessels prepared to depart, they turned their sensors toward the probe itself. For a moment, the damaged reconnaissance device was bathed in scanning beams that analyzed its construction, its purpose, and its origin. Then one of the human ships fired a precisely calibrated energy burst that disabled the probe's engines and communication systems while leaving its recording equipment intact. The attack was not meant to destroy the probe, but to ensure it would drift helplessly until someone found it. "They wanted us to see this," Dr. Yix concluded. "They deliberately allowed this probe to survive so we would discover their capabilities." The chamber erupted in confused conversation as representatives tried to process what they had witnessed. The humans were not just more advanced than anyone had imagined. They were actively demonstrating their superiority while remaining hidden from normal observation. Trade Minister Voss raised his tentacles for attention. "If the humans possess such advanced technology, why do our surveillance systems show them as primitive? Our sensors are the most sophisticated in the galaxy." "That is the question that terrifies me," Dr. Yix replied. "Either our sensors are completely wrong, which seems impossible, or the humans are deliberately maintaining the appearance of primitive technology while operating far more advanced systems in secret." Ambassador Krell stood slowly, his face pale with realization. "The survey reports," he said quietly. "We focused on what we could see from a distance. Chemical rockets, primitive satellites, surface-based conflicts. But what if those are just the technologies they allow us to observe?" The implications were staggering. If the humans were capable of such sophisticated deception, it meant they had been aware of galactic civilization for much longer than anyone had suspected. They had been studying the Council ships, learning their capabilities, and preparing for eventual contact. "We need to reassess everything we know about the human species," Elder Thane declared. "If they have been concealing their true capabilities, we may have seriously underestimated the threat they represent." Captain Nix stood to address the assembly. "It is worse than that," he said. "The precision of their attacks, the systematic nature of their operations, the fact that they wanted us to discover their capabilities. This is not the behavior of a species that stumbled upon advanced technology. This is the behavior of a species that has been planning for this moment. The final piece of recovered data sent shockwaves through the council chambers. The probe had detected a brief transmission from the human vessels, broadcast on all frequencies in perfect galactic standard, the universal language used for interspecies communication. The message was simple and direct. You have been observed. Your intentions toward our species have been noted. Prepare for contact. The chamber fell into absolute silence as the message played again. The humans were not just aware of galactic civilization. They were announcing their presence and their displeasure with how they had been treated. The species that had been dismissed as primitive was revealing itself. As a major power that had been watching and waiting, Elder Thane called for an emergency recess as the full implications of the discovery sank in. The galaxy's great powers had not discovered humanity. Instead, humanity had discovered them, studied them, and prepared for the day when they would reveal themselves. The age of human secrecy was ending, and the galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face a species that had been underestimated for far too long. The laughter that had filled the council chambers during Ambassador Krell's presentation seemed like a distant memory now, replaced by the growing realization that the balance of power in the galaxy was about to shift in ways no one had anticipated. In the depths of space, human vessels continued their patient watch, monitoring galactic communications and preparing for the confrontation that was now inevitable. The time for hiding was over. The emergency summit convened 3 days after the probe's data had been analyzed. This time, however, the humans had been invited to attend. The council expected to meet with representatives of a species that had somehow acquired advanced technology through unknown means. What they got instead was a demonstration of intelligence and preparation that fundamentally challenged everything they thought they knew about the universe. The human delegation arrived in a single vessel that made every ship in the council fleet look like primitive scrap metal. The craft was nearly 3 kilometers long, its hull a seamless blend of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. It moved through space without any visible propulsion, gliding silently toward Harmony Station with the grace of a living creature. As a human ship approached, the station's sensors struggled to penetrate its defenses. The vessel's energy signature was unlike anything in the Council's databases, and its internal structure remained completely hidden from their most advanced scanning systems. It was as if the ship existed in a different dimension, visible but untouchable by conventional technology. The docking procedure was flawless, the human vessel interfacing with the station's systems using protocols that the Council had never shared with anyone. The fact that the humans knew exactly how to connect to their most secure facilities sent another chill through the assembled representatives. When the airlock opened, the beings who emerged looked exactly as the initial surveys had indicated. The humans were bipedal, relatively small compared to many galactic species, and appeared physically fragile. But their eyes held an intelligence that made even the most ancient council members uncomfortable. These were not the primitive beings that had been dismissed so casually just months before. Dr. Anna Reed, the leader of the human delegation, walked into the great assembly hall with calm confidence. She was followed by a small group of advisors, each carrying themselves with the bearing of individuals who knew they held every advantage in the coming negotiations. "Honored representatives," Dr. Reed began, her voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustics, "you called us primitive. You laughed at our chemical rockets, our nuclear power, our wars. You saw only what you expected to see." The assembled delegates sat in tense silence as the human scientist continued her opening statement. There was no anger in her voice, no accusation, just a calm recitation of facts that cut deeper than any emotional outburst could have. "You made a fundamental error in your assessment of our species," she continued. "You assume that technological advancement follows a predictable path, that a species must master one level of development before moving to the next. You believe that what you could observe from a distance represented the full extent of our capabilities." Dr. Reed activated a holographic projector, and images filled the space above the assembly. But these were not the primitive human technologies that Ambassador Krell had presented months before. Instead, the display showed massive space-based manufacturing facilities, fleets of advanced starships, and research stations that dwarfed anything the Council had ever constructed. "We have been aware of your civilization for 37 years, Dr. Reed revealed. Every survey mission, every probe, every casual observation of our system has been detected, analyzed, and studied. We have been learning not just about your technology, but about your cultures, your military capabilities, and your political structures." The chamber buzzed with shocked conversation as the implications sank in. The humans had not only been aware of galactic civilization, they had been conducting their own surveillance operations for decades. "But your homeworld shows no sign of such advanced technology," protested Dr. Yix. "Our sensors detect only primitive industrial activity and basic space-based infrastructure." Dr. Reed smiled, and the expression was somehow more unsettling than any show of anger would have been. "That is because we chose to let you see only what we wanted you to see. Every observation you made was carefully managed to maintain the illusion of primitive development. Your sensors are excellent, Dr. Yix, but they can only detect what actually exists in normal space." The human delegation's technical advisor, a man introduced as Dr. Tom Wilson, stepped forward to explain. "We developed dimensional folding technology 43 years ago, shortly after we detected your first survey probe. Our major industrial facilities, our fleets, our research stations, all exist in folded space dimensions that are invisible to conventional sensors. From your perspective, we appear to be confined to a single planet with primitive technology. In reality, we have been expanding throughout this region of the galaxy for over 4 decades. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Dimensional folding was theoretical technology that even the most advanced council species had never managed to achieve. The humans had not only mastered it, they had been using it to hide their true capabilities for decades. "You reverse-engineered our technology," Captain Nix observed. "Every ship you captured, every system you studied, you learned from our designs and improved upon them?" "That is partially correct," Dr. Reed acknowledged. "We did analyze your technology extensively, but we did not simply copy it. We studied the principles behind your designs and then developed our own solutions. In many cases, our approaches proved superior to your original methods." She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed comparative analyses of human and council technologies. The data was devastating. Human ships were faster, more efficient, and more heavily armed than anything the Council had ever built. Their defensive systems were impenetrable to conventional weapons, and their energy sources operated on principles that the galaxy's best scientists could not understand. "But how?" Elder Thane asked. "No species advances this rapidly. The technological development you described should have taken millions of years." Dr. Reed's expression grew more serious. "You dismissed our wars as primitive and wasteful. We saw them as laboratories for innovation under pressure. You viewed our competitive nature as a weakness. We recognized it as our greatest strength. When faced with the evidence of your technological superiority, we did not despair, we adapted." The human leader activated another display, showing the timeline of human technological development. The progression was unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Where other species took millennia to advance from chemical rockets to faster-than-light travel, humans had bridged that gap in less than 50 years. "You see, we have something that most galactic species appear to have lost," Dr. Reed continued. "We have the ability to look at a problem that seems impossible and find a solution anyway. We have the willingness to take risks, to fail, to try. Again, with a completely different approach. We have the drive to compete, to innovate, to refuse to accept limitations." The implications were staggering. The humans had not stumbled upon advanced technology or received help from some unknown source. They had developed their capabilities through pure intellectual effort, driven by their awareness of galactic civilization and their determination to achieve equality. "The missing ships?" Ambassador Krell said quietly. "You were testing your capabilities against our defenses." "We were conducting field exercises," Dr. Reed confirmed. We needed to understand your tactical doctrines, your response patterns, your technological limitations. Every vessel we intercepted provided valuable data about galactic military capabilities. We studied your crews, your equipment, your operational procedures. You kept prisoners, Captain Nix accused. We kept guests, Dr. Reed corrected. Every individual we recovered from disabled vessels was treated with respect and care. They were interviewed extensively about their technologies and cultures, but they were not harmed. Most were returned to their homeworlds with their memories of the encounter carefully edited. A few volunteered to remain and assist with our research. The casual mention of memory editing sent another chill through the assembly. The humans possessed not only advanced technology, but sophisticated understanding of alien psychology and neurology. What do you want from us? Elder Thane asked finally. Dr. Reed's smile returned, but this time it carried a hint of genuine warmth. We want what every intelligent species wants: recognition, respect, and the opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization. We have solutions to problems that have plagued the Council for centuries. We have technologies that could revolutionize interstellar travel, energy production, and resource management. We have perspectives that could help resolve conflicts that have seemed intractable for millennia. The human leader paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. But we will not accept the role of junior partners or primitive protégés. We are your equals in every meaningful way, and we expect to be treated as such. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives processed the magnitude of what they had learned. The species they had dismissed as primitive had become the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, not through conquest or luck, but through sheer intellectual determination and the willingness to see possibilities where others saw only problems. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted permanently, and the humans were offering partnership rather than demanding submission. The question now was whether the Council would be wise enough to accept. The debate that followed Dr. Reed's revelation was unlike anything the Galactic Council had experienced in its 1,000-year history. Representatives argued through the night, their voices echoing through the great assembly hall as they struggled. To process the implications of humanity's true capabilities, Ambassador Krell led the faction that advocated for immediate military action. Despite the overwhelming evidence of human technological superiority, he argued that their small numbers made them vulnerable to a coordinated galactic response. We cannot allow this deception to go unanswered, he declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades in galactic politics. If we accept their terms now, we set a precedent that any species can manipulate the Council through lies and technological intimidation. We have fleets throughout the galaxy. Their ship may be advanced, but it is only one vessel. Elder Thane raised his hand for silence. And what of our missing ships? What of the 43 vessels that simply vanished? Are you prepared to accept responsibility for the lives that will be lost in such a conflict? Sometimes the price of freedom is measured in sacrifice, Krell replied. We cannot bow to these primitives simply because they have acquired advanced technology through deception and theft. The debate continued for hours, with representatives from dozens of species weighing in on the most important decision in galactic history. Some supported Krell's position, arguing that humanity's deception proved they could not be trusted. Others advocated for accommodation, recognizing that the humans had demonstrated capabilities that made military confrontation extremely risky. Dr. Reed and her delegation listened to the arguments with patient attention, occasionally sharing quiet observations among themselves but never interrupting the proceedings. Their calm demeanor was somehow more unsettling than any display of aggression would have been. The debate ended abruptly when Captain Nix burst into the chamber, his face pale with shock. "Elder Thane," he called out, "you need to see this immediately." The great assembly hall fell silent as Nix activated the chamber's main display system. The holographic projector showed the space surrounding Harmony Station, captured by the facility's external sensors. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The station hung in the void as it always had, surrounded by the usual collection of council vessels and support craft. Then the display shifted to show a wider view of the local space, and the assembled representatives gasped in collective horror. The sky around Harmony Station was filled with ships. Hundreds of human vessels had appeared as if from nowhere, their dark hulls barely visible against the starfield. They hung in perfect formation around the station, their positions carefully calculated to provide maximum tactical advantage. Every approach vector was covered, every escape route blocked, every critical system of the station within range of their weapons. When did they arrive? Elder Thane asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They did not arrive, Captain Nix replied grimly. They were already here. Our sensors detected nothing until 3 minutes ago, when they chose to become visible. They have been surrounding us the entire time, hidden by the same technology that conceals their major facilities. The tactical implications were overwhelming. The humans had not sent a single ship to negotiate, they had sent an entire fleet. More disturbing still, the fleet had been in position before the negotiations even began, suggesting a level of planning and coordination that went far beyond anything the Council had imagined possible. Dr. Reed stood slowly, her calm demeanor unchanged despite the chaos erupting around her. Before anyone makes a decision they might regret, she said, her voice cutting through the panicked conversations, I suggest you consider your options carefully. The display shifted again, showing detailed tactical analyses of the human fleet. Positions. Every ship was precisely placed to maximize devastating effect while minimizing the risk to Harmony Station itself. The formation was so perfect it looked like a textbook example of space-based siege warfare. This is an act of war, Ambassador Krell shouted, his earlier confidence now replaced by barely controlled fury. You come here under the pretense of negotiation while surrounding us with a battle fleet. We come here offering partnership, Dr. Reed replied calmly. The fleet is simply insurance that our offer receives the consideration it deserves. We have learned much about galactic politics in our years of observation, including how often peaceful species are dismissed or exploited by those who mistake restraint for weakness. Elder Thane studied the tactical display with the experienced eye of someone who had lived through multiple interstellar conflicts. The human formation was flawless, demonstrating not just superior technology but superior strategy and coordination. Any attempt at military resistance would result in the complete destruction of the Council forces. What are your terms? He asked finally. Dr. Reed activated her own holographic projector, displaying a formal treaty document. Full recognition of humanity as an equal member of galactic civilization, with all voting rights and territorial considerations that status entails. Immediate cessation of all surveillance activities in human space without prior permission. Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between Earth and all Council member species. She paused, allowing the representatives to read through the detailed provisions of the proposed agreement. In exchange, we offer our technological innovations to benefit all galactic civilization. We provide solutions to the resource conflicts that have plagued the Outer Rim for centuries. We share our advances in energy production, space-time manipulation, and defensive systems. The terms were generous almost to the point of being suspicious. The humans were offering far more than they demanded, providing technologies that could revolutionize galactic civilization in exchange for simple recognition and respect. Why? Asked Dr. Yix. You clearly have the power to dictate terms. Why? Offer partnership when you could simply demand submission? Dr. Reed's expression softened slightly. Because conquest is not our goal. We did not spend decades developing advanced technology so we could become galactic tyrants. We developed it so we could join galactic civilization as equals rather than subjects. She gestured to the tactical display still showing the human fleet. This demonstration of force is not a threat, it is a prevention. We want to ensure that our offer is considered on its merits rather than dismissed because someone believes we can be intimidated or controlled. Captain Nix studied the formation patterns with professional interest. Your fleet coordination is remarkable. The precision required to maintain such formations while cloaked, suggests a level of tactical experience that should be impossible for a species new to space warfare. We are not new to warfare, Dr. Reed replied. We are new to space-based warfare, but we have been studying your tactical doctrines for decades. We have run millions of simulations, analyzed every major space battle in recorded galactic history, and developed our own strategic innovations based on what we learned. The human leader activated another display showing comparative analyses of various galactic military engagements. The level of detail was staggering, including tactical assessments of battles that some council species had tried to keep classified. We have also identified the fundamental weaknesses in current galactic military thinking, she continued. Your strategies are based on centuries of fighting opponents with similar technological capabilities. You have developed elaborate doctrines for battles between roughly equal forces. But you have no effective countermeasures for dealing with significantly superior technology combined with innovative tactics. As if to demonstrate her point, the human fleet began a coordinated maneuver that left the watching council representatives speechless. The hundreds of vessels moved in perfect synchronization, their formations shifting and flowing like a single organism. The display of coordination was so precise it seemed almost supernatural. We offer you a choice, Dr. Reed said as the fleet completed its demonstration and returned to defensive positions. You can accept our partnership and benefit from our innovations, our perspectives, and our problem-solving abilities. Or you can continue to treat us as primitives and face the consequences of that decision. The threat was implied rather than stated, but its meaning was unmistakable. The humans were offering cooperation, but they were also prepared to impose their will if their offer was rejected. Ambassador Krell looked around the chamber, seeing his support evaporating as the reality of the situation sank in. The human fleet represented power beyond anything the Council could match, operated by beings who had demonstrated strategic thinking that surpassed galactic military doctrine. This is extortion, he said weakly. This is diplomacy, Dr. Reed corrected. We are offering mutually beneficial cooperation backed by the assurance that we cannot be forced to accept unfavorable terms. It is the same approach every major galactic power has used when establishing their positions in the Council. Elder Thane called for a formal vote. The choice was simple: accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization or face the consequences of rejecting beings who had already demonstrated their ability to outthink and outfight any opposition. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species was admitted to the Council not because they had gradually earned their place over millennia, but because they had proven themselves worthy through intelligence, innovation, and the wisdom to offer partnership rather than demand submission. As the treaty was signed and the human fleet began to disperse, representatives throughout the chamber found themselves reconsidering everything they thought they knew about intelligence, technology, and the nature of civilization itself. The species that had been laughed at as primitive had become the dominant force in galactic affairs, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the demonstration that sometimes the greatest strength comes from the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. Dr. Reed remained at the podium as the other representatives filed out, her calm smile reflecting the satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. Humanity had taken its place among the stars not as supplicants or conquerors, but as equals who had earned their position through merit and determination. The sky above Harmony Station no longer burned with the fire of weapons, but with the light of a new age in galactic civilization, guided by a species that had turned being underestimated into their greatest advantage.